speaker, Professor K.C. Pandey, is with us. He has joined us, and his topic is Indian philosophy and Wittgenstein. I know about Indian philosophy, very natural thing that we are not body, mind, and intellect. We are conscious being. We all are souls, and we have to realize ourselves that we are the masters of the masters. We are not the slaves of our body, mind, and intellect. We are the soul is the master of body, mind, and intellect. We all know about it, sir. But I don't know. I am telling you, I don't know about Western philosophy. I don't have much interest in Western philosophy, especially about Wittgenstein. I don't know about it, and I really want to hear to you with your lecture that is based on Indian philosophy and Wittgenstein. I have one paper in MA on Wittgenstein. I know only that one thing, that his paper is based on philosophy of language, philosophy of mind, and the philosophy of logic. And he started his philosophy from Tractatus, and he ended his philosophy from philosophical investigations. And when he ended his philosophy from philosophical investigation, he still remain in the illusion that why there are so many philosophical dilemmas is there. And I have quoted him. Yeah, I know about his famous quotation: "A battle against bewitched of our intelligence by a means of language." So Indian philosophy is also telling us भाषा से अगर हम ऊपर उठ जाएं और आत्मा के स्वरूप को पहचाने, तभी हम अपने आप से अपनी पहचान कर सकते हैं। और वुडगिनस्टाइन भी कहीं ये कह रहा है कि हम भाषा के बंधनों में बन जाते हैं और कहीं ना कहीं जो हमारा असली स्वरूप है उसको नहीं देख पाते हैं। लेकिन दर्शन शास्त्र इन सारे उभयता पाश को, इन डायलेमा को, इन द्वंद्वों को किस तरह से लेता है, ये मैं आपसे जरूर सुनना चाहूंगी। मैं बिल्कुल स्टूडेंट की तरह सुनूंगी, एक रिसर्चर और लेक्चरर की तरह नहीं सुनूंगी। इससे पहले कि मैं आपको आमंत्रित करूं इस भाषीय मंच पर, मैं आपका परिचय सब जो हमारे दर्शक और श्रोता हैं उनसे करवाना चाहती हूँ। आप द प्रोफेसर केसी पांडे इज अ करंट एचओडी of the philosophy department of University of Lucknow. He is a professor department of philosophy University of Lucknow, and he is also holding other positions: governing body member of Indian Council of Philosophical Research, MHRD, Government of India, New Delhi. He reviewed a review book editor, Journal of Indian Council of Philosophical Research, Springers. He is a secretary, Ludwig Wittgenstein Philosophical Society. Now, his teaching experience is all about, he is Associate Professor, Department of Philosophy, Lucknow University, Lucknow since November 1, 2010. Now, till now, he is holding this position. Associate Professor, Department of Philosophy, DDU, Gorakhpur University, Gorakhpur since 16 July. And it's a long biodata. And his area of interest is analytic philosophy, Wittgenstein, Buddhism, classical and contemporary Indian philosophy, epistemology, integral humanism. And he wrote so many books. I have seen so many books. Is there recent responses to the philosophy of Wittgenstein, Realm of Religious Belief, Wittgenstein, Ethics and Religion, Ethics and Epic. So many books sir has wrote, and he has got so many awards, scholarships, fellowships, and other recognition. On my essay, Integral Humanism Concept of Kitty has been awarded as one of the best paper of the National Seminar on Philosophy and Social Thought of Pandit Deen Dayal Upadhyay, organized by Bharatiya Shiksha Shodh Sansthan, Lucknow, held during September 7-9, 2017. And another award is Swami Parvanand Book Award by Indian Philosophical Congress 2011 to my book Religious Belief, Superstitious and Wittgenstein. And sir has got, it's a long list of awards and scholarship and fellowships and recognitions. Sir, once again, I welcome to you in the
Pooja ma'am, you are mute.
Pooja ma'am, please unmute yourself. म्यूट हो गया.
Monica, my voice is not clear
Now you are
till
audible.
now.
Yes, you are audible now.
Now, what I have spoke last? Do tell me.
Just invite to the sir. That's it. आप invite कर रहे थे. आपने उनका बायोडाटा complete कर दिया था.
Okay, okay, dear. So, sir, once again, welcome. आपका बहुत बहुत अभिनंदन. अपने इतने बहुमूल्य समय में से आपने अब समय निकाला आज वर्ल्ड फिलोसफी डे के अवसर पर. अब मंच आपका है.
Thank you so much for having me here, principal of the college, SPM, and Dr. Hansi Beast, teacher in charge of Department of Philosophy, SPM College for Women, and Dr. Chetna Gupta. So thank you all for having me here. I was just listening to the words about me. I am grateful to the person whom I don't know the name rather. So I'm thankful that you have taken pain to speak so much about me. Now,
Sir, I am Pooja Sharma from philosophy department.
Pooja Sharma, that's great.
Oh,
Nice to
yeah.
meet you. So,
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much for expressing so much loudly about me and about introducing my lecture in brief. So, what I'm going to talk here is that is very different from what Professor Jatasankar, my teacher in University of Allahabad in late 1980s, spoke about. So I'm going to talk about a little different from him, and different in the sense that I'm going to talk about some philosophical aspect only, limited to comparative philosophy, in order to bring out a perspective which is good for research in philosophy. So maybe like मैं समझता हूँ कि मेरा जो ये व्याख्यान है, अगर मैं कुछ नई बात कह सकता हूँ, कह पाया, तो मैं समझूंगा कि मैंने कुछ कंट्रीब्यूट किया है. आई विल बी लाइक डिलाइटेड टू कंट्रीब्यूट समथिंग, some sparkle for researchers in future. So it is a comparative philosophy which I'm going to talk here, and the comparative philosophy means that there is a comparison between Eastern and Western philosophy, or one Eastern thinker and Western thinker, or maybe within Indian systems like Shankara and Nagarjuna, Sankhya and Bhagavad Gita, etc. So what I have chosen here to present before you, after such a long lecture by Professor Jatasankar sir, to express something very subtle, very precise topics, so that it is limited to the time which is now already it's 7 for 7:05, I suppose, 7:05, and I would like to finish in within half an hour. Now, uh, I'll be happy that if some questions are put at the end of my lecture. And Wittgenstein is a thinker which is in syllabus of almost all the colleges and universities in India. That is a fact, and it is a syllabus. Wittgenstein is a thinker who is there in the syllabus of civil services in UPSC, and who is in syllabus of NET examination, which was reviewed by us few months back. So Wittgenstein is a important thinker in philosophy, important philosopher in philosophy, and we all know to understand properly his philosophy. Basically, he has to be understood in Indian context. This is my contention here. Not going much into detail of Wittgenstein because that takes lots and lots of lectures, many lectures. Here I'm going to be precise in basically expressing only 5 points. Number one, philosophy and darshana. Number two, philosophy of language, Indian philosophy of language and Wittgenstein. Number three, Indian theory of knowledge and Wittgenstein. Number four, Indian metaphysics and Wittgenstein. And number five, last, is Indian ethics, that is moral philosophy and Wittgenstein. These are the 5 points They all constitute my lecture here today in brief. So let us begin. Now, what I'm going to do here is to bring out certain issues which are relevant for current researches in philosophy, current PhD researches, or current paper publications. So I have been seeing that people are writing, professors are writing in this area. So I just chosen some issues which are relevant these days, which are burning issues rather, in philosophy of Wittgenstein and in philosophy of India. Now, uh, I have tried to present parallels here between these two sides. That is, on one side there is Indian philosophy, and on the other side there is Wittgensteinian philosophy. So let us start with the first one, that is philosophy versus darshana. And before starting this philosophy versus darshana, I'll be like to register here that I'm basically impressed with the two persons in the world. Number one is Wittgenstein, and number two, Wittgenstein, for obvious reasons that I've been studying Wittgenstein since my Delhi University days in 1990 when I was there. And I suppose that I met Dr. Hansi Bist sometime there, but I don't know. I don't remember. But then I have I think I have met her. But these are the side points. Now let us see as to how philosophy and darshana are to be looked at. There is a debate as to what are the differences between philosophy and darshana. Philosophy means, like, of course, love of wisdom, and it has been defined by many ways. But here, if we take Wittgenstein only, then as expressed by Pusa, that is also one aspect of Wittgensteinian notion of philosophy. Of course, that is what she said, that according to Wittgenstein, and in as he Wittgenstein says in Philosophical Investigations, which was not published during his lifetime, and Wittgenstein's time is 1889 to 1951 when he died. He did not let publish his this book because he thought that this book is not complete as yet. So he did not let get it published, though he was a great philosopher known during his lifetime. So in PI, as Pooja said, that philosophy is what is philosophy? Philosophy is basically something which brings clarity to thought. And in this, he said what Pooja said, that bewitchment of intelligence by means of language. That is, हमारी बुद्धि जो है वो चकाचौंध हो जाती है भाषा के द्वारा. और for example, if you are in a dark place and you are put all of a sudden light on your eyes, then after light is withdrawn, you are not able to see anything. So आँख का चकाचौंध हो जाना उसी को कहते हैं, and then you are not able to see anything. This is what happens in life, that language basically hoodwinks us. That because of multiple meanings of language, what happens, that we do not see clearly as to what is the actual reality. That means that what is the actual meaning of a particular expression in our day-to-day behavior as well. But more so, Wittgenstein is talking about philosophical concepts, like philosophical concepts in the past. Philosophical, among past traditions, there are many words, many concepts in philosophy which are basically vague, whose meanings are not clear. And what is the reason? The reason is that language basically hoodwinks us, because there is a bewitchment of intelligence by means of language. Yes, this is what Wittgenstein said. This is also Wittgenstein said. But the emphasis of Wittgenstein was that philosophy is basically logical clarification of thought. So दर्शन क्या है? दर्शन है विचार का तार्किक स्पष्टीकरण. Because our thoughts are not clear. We are not clear in our thoughts. As Frederick Wiseman has put it, that there is a dichotomy of will. At times we realize that what to do and what not to do. So basically, we hang on between these two wheels. दो इच्छाओं के बीच में मनुष्य हमेशा रहता है. वह सोचता है कि ये करूं कि वो करूं. So this basically bewitchment of intelligence adds to this that we are not able to decide in a particular moment of time, according to Friedrich Wiseman. But in the context of Wittgensteinian philosophy, logical clarification of thought is needed in order to have pragmatic value of our action, as well as direction has to be there in life, because directionlessness has not to be there, and bewitchment of intelligence makes us directionlessness in directionlessness position. So Wittgenstein basically talks about that let us understand philosophy as logical clarification of thought. And then he also says that philosophy is what? To put things as it is, means that the actual meaning has to be presented there. Now, there are many things that Wittgenstein's philosophy imbibes, not all of which is possible to express here, as I said in the beginning, because it will take several discourses here, which is relevant in the context of notion of philosophy. I would like to say only this much, that for Wittgenstein and for the entire West, which talks about philosophy as love of wisdom, basically emphasizes on philosophy as a theoretical exercise, that is logical clarification of thought, that is philosophy as something which makes you understand reality better. But as different from Western notion of philosophizing, darshana is not only theoretic, but it is also practice. So you'll see the differences in drishyate aneni darshanam, that is, darshana is that which provides drishti, that is vision, insight. The insight is also provided in the Western philosophy, but the insight of Indian philosophy is in different in such a manner that it has practical utility. And in this practical utility, the various branches of philosophy, that is, for example, in the present context, philosophy of language, epistemology, that is theory of knowledge, and the metaphysics, and ethics, they all are imbibed into one. भारतीय दर्शन में दर्शन की बहुत सारी शाखाएं अलग अलग नहीं है, बल्कि वो सब एक में ही imbibed है. So this difference is the one, that is, they are counterpart rather, Indian philosophy and Wittgenstein in brief. Now let's come to the second point, and that is philosophy of language. Philosophy of language is a branch of philosophy which talks about meaning of expression, and it's a very vibrant branch of philosophy. 20th century philosophy is too much emphasizes, basically this 20th century philosophy emphasizes too much on philosophy of language. More or less, 20th century philosophy could be treated as philosophy of language. So what is this meaning, and what is the meaning of a particular proposition or sentence and statement? Not going into much details about as to what is the difference between proposition and sentence in philosophy, and rather let us understand this like this, that proposition is a meaning of a sentence which is invisible and non-linguistic entity, and the sentence basically is linguistic entity. So according to Wittgenstein, as Wittgenstein now in this at this point, I would like to uh, express, rather it is relevant here to make the distinction between early Wittgenstein, that is Tractarian Wittgenstein, and later Wittgenstein. And here Tractarian Wittgenstein is the one who talks about picture theory of meaning, that is, in meaning there is a one-to-one relationship between language and reality. So language proposition is the picture of reality, the meaning of picture theory, which is there in Tacitus Logico Philosophicus, published in German in 1921 and in English 1922, says that meaning of a particular expression or proposition or sentence is decided by picture theory of meaning. That is, proposition is picture of reality. Now, uh, not much going into picture theory of meaning, and just saying that this picture theory of meaning is something which has relevance in Bhartiyary's philosophy of language in Indian philosophy. So, as we all know that in Bhartiyari philosophy of language, we have development from Kumarila Bhatta to Prabhakar Bhatta to Bhartihari. So, there is a distinction uh, among three theories of philosophy of language in India, that is Abhitanvavad, Anveta Vidhanvad, and Sphotvad of Bhartihari. So, Abhitanvavad is the theory of Bhatta Mimamsa, that is Kumarila Bhatta maintains that meaning of a particular sentence is decided as we first get the meaning of particular words, and through through delineating the meaning of particular words we come to know about the particular sentence. सो किसी सेंटेंस का अर्थ जानना है अगर आपको, तो सबसे पहले उसके शब्दों का अर्थ हमें ज्ञात होता है, और उन शब्दों के अर्थ के बाद हमें उस वाक्य का अर्थ ज्ञात होता है. दिस इज कुमारिल भट्ट. Then Prabhakar Bhatta is different from Kumaril Bhatta, and his theory is not Abhitanvayavad but Anveta Vidhanvad, which says that meaning of a particular sentence is accrued holistically. That is, meaning of the sentence as a whole. We don't get meaning of particular words, rather we get the meaning of the sentence as a whole. Thereafter we get the meaning of particular words of a particular sentence. So this is the difference between Abhitanvayavad of Bhatta and Anveta Vidhanvad of Prabhakara. Then from this we next come to Bhartiyary's philosophy of language, which is Sphotavada, which is closer to Prabhakara, and this is holistic theory of meaning. It is called Sphotavada is called holistic theory of meaning, because in this there are three layers of deciding meaning of a particular sentence are delineated. That is, they are called Pashyanti, Madhyama, and Vaikhari. So Pashyanti is something which happens. Suppose you want to speak something, so that unitary potentiality of a particular sentence. So if you have potentiality to speak a particular word, that is called Pashyanti, and before the utterance of word or sentence, which is called Vaikhari, that is expressed speech, is called Vaikhari. Before that there is a middle stage between Pashyanti and Vaikhari, that is called Madhyama. So Pashyanti, Madhyama, and Vaikhari, these are the three stages of expressing a sentence according to Bhartiyari, which is closer to Prabhakara's theory of Anveta Vidhanvad. Now, not going much into detail of Bhartiyari, but only saying one sentence, and that is that according to Bhartiyari, there is a kind of identity between language and reality outside. This is something which is acceptable to Wittgenstein in Tacitus Logico Philosophicus, which talks about picture theory of meaning. Well, not only Tractarian theory of language, but basically, if we go to philosophical investigations that related Wittgenstein, we find that meaning is decided by language game and form of life. Language game means the context of a particular sentence. So the same sentence spoken in different contexts have different meanings. So you might be surprised that a particular person gets your sentences in a different way, and the same person takes the meaning of the same sentence in a different way in a different time and space. Why does this happen? How does this happen, that the same person taking your same sentence in different ways? This all happens according to Wittgenstein because of language game. In Hindi this is called भाषा खेल के द्वारा ही किसी भी वाक्य के अर्थ का निर्धारण होता है. Now in Bhartiyari also we find that there are many determinants of meaning, and those determinants of meaning are basically external to that sentence, external to that expression, and they are external in the word, and therefore they decide the meaning of particular sentence. Now this is very much interesting to go into detail of Wittgenstein and Barthes, and I had one opportunity to express this view in 2009 in Vienna, and I found that Westerners got much interested in philosophy of Barthes as compared to philosophy of Wittgenstein. So I was lucky that I could express their Barthes' philosophy of language in much detail and get some insights of Wittgensteinian philosophy and bring out some parallels between philosophy of Wittgenstein and philosophy of Barthes so far as philosophy of language is concerned. One more point, and then the second point will come to an end, and that point is basically in Nyaya philosophy also we find that meaning of a particular sentence is decided by basically four conditions, and they are akanksha, yogita, sannit, tatparya. This we teach to our students in Nyaya School of Indian Philosophy that without fulfilling these four conditions, that is akanksha, that is words of particular sentence, much must desire each other. They must not contradict each other in in order to decide the meaning of a particular sentence. So akanksha, they must have akanksha for each other. Each word of a particular sentence must has akanksha for the other word. This is called akanksha. And the second is yogita. Each word of a particular sentence must have ability to express meaning. Akanksha, yogita, sannidhi. They must be in proximity to each other. That is, if one word of a sentence is spoken in the morning, the other word should not be spoken after much time duration. It must be continuously spoken without any time gap. Then only the meaning will be accrued. Otherwise, there will not be any meaning. So, suppose somebody says that this is water, or bring a glass of water. So, all the words of this sentence, if are spoken after a long time duration, after suppose 2 hours, 3 hours, then they got no meaning of this sentence. So, each word of a sentence must be continued in proximity of time and space to each other. Akanksha, yogita, sannidhi. This is called sannidhi. And then tatpari is intention of the speaker. Intention of the speaker um is pretty significant because meaning has abhidha, lakshana, vyanjana. There are same so many layers of particular meaning of particular word that we are very much aware about this, that double meaning. So people don't talk in a straightforward manner, they speak in some satirical ways. So in order to grasp the particular satire of a particular conversation, you need to have understood the intention of the speaker. Otherwise, if you don't understand the speaker's intention, you'll not be able to understand the satire. The satire will lose the meaning so far as you are concerned. So Nyaya talks about these four conditions of deciding meaning of a particular sentence, that is akanksha, yogita, sannit, tatparya. Wittgenstein likewise talks about conditions which decide the meaning of a particular word, and we see that they are so close to each other. That is various schools of Indian philosophy, including Bhartiya and Nyaya, which I have expressed, and because of time constraints, I'm not going into other details, other schools, but you can think that you can have parallels between Mimamsa and Wittgenstein, and then you can have parallels between Vedanta and Wittgenstein. Of course, there are books which talk about Vedanta and Wittgenstein, and then you can have likewise more researches in the area of philosophy of Wittgenstein and Indian philosophy of language. Now, after this second point, that is after philosophy and darshana, and after in philosophy of language, Indian philosophy of language and philosophy of language of Wittgenstein, let us come to the third point. And third point basically is about epistemology, that is theory of knowledge. That is, what is knowledge? So Wittgenstein wrote only one book, and that book basically is not the end of is basically the book which Wittgenstein wrote, which Wittgenstein was writing and died. and he kept on writing. Uh, 2 days before he gone into unconsciousness, and that book is known as Uncertainty. So Uncertainty, basically Wittgenstein wrote in order to respond to G. Moore's two papers. One is Proof of an External Word, and another is A Defense of Common Sense. So these two papers of Moore were published in 1939 and 1925 respectively. And basically the paper Proof of an External Word of G. Moore was basically a response to Kant's allegation in his book Critique of Pure Reason, where Kant talks about one scandal. So I was just surprised to listen that scandal word in Kant's Critique of Pure Reason, translated by Kempy Smith, Norman Kempy Smith. N.K. Smith basically translates that word as scandal, and he says that there is a scandal in philosophy. And what is the scandal? Scandal is that philosophers so far have not been able to prove the existence of the external word. And what is this basically issue, philosophical issue? The issue is that the issue between realists and idealists, basically. Realists say that there is a reality external to the subject, that is external to the mind, and idealists say that there is no reality outside the mind. So of course, as you know, that Kant was idealist. For him there was no need of proof of the external word, because the word is not outside the mind. So suppose I'm talking to you, then I'm not outside yourself, but I am basically in your mind. So this is the idea of idealism, that for example, if I take the ice cream, then the ice cream is in your mind according to idealists. Likewise, the entire world is an idea in your mind according to idealists. But according to realists, no, the idea is different from the external world reality. So there is a debate between idealism and realism. The great debate is there. And here I'm not going to do that debate, but here what I'm going to say is that the Kant's allegation that there is a scandal in philosophy, that philosophers have not been able to prove the existence of external word, basically was responded by G. Moore in his paper published in 1939. And then in that paper, Moore concluded that paper with the expression that I know that this is my left hand, I know that this is my right hand. So by way of saying this, Moore wanted to say that since my hands are existing, it means that one portion of external world is existing, that means that world exists outside. So that means that I have been able to provide the proof of the external world, as against Kant's view that there is a scandal in philosophy where philosophers have not been able to give proof for the external world. Now, this is pretty interesting, interesting from the Wittgenstein point of view. Wittgensteinian point of view, basically, how? Because Wittgenstein begins his uncertainty from the sentence that if you are able to know, if you prove that you know your left hand and you prove that your right hand, then I will grant you everything, whatever you say that you know this, you know that. That means that Wittgenstein's position was like this, that the proof provided for the existence of the external world basically is futile, because this is nonsense to say that standing before your house, to say that I know that this is my house, and going to your mom and say that, oh, I know that you are mom. So knowing you, nobody says to mom and says that, oh mom, you are my mom, I know that you are my mom. Are you standing at before your house and you say that, oh, I know that this is my house? Because Wittgenstein say that Moore is saying something like this in order to provide reply to Kant. So this is something good so far as we compare this position of Wittgenstein with the philosophical issue of Swatah Pramanyavada and Partha Pramanyavada. As we all know that Mimamsa and Sankhya in Indian philosophy basically talk about Swatah Pramanyavada, and Bauddha and Nyaya talk about Partha Pramanyavada. And Wittgenstein basically in this context could be treated as both, as Swatah Pramanyavadi and Partha Pramanyavadi. So intrinsic validity of knowledge and extrinsic validity of knowledge both could be researched in Wittgenstein's book Uncertainty, and research papers could be written in this area, which will be pretty interesting. This was my motive to bring out the third point in my lecture, that is epistemology. Now, coming to the fourth point, uh, that is the metaphysics. And after this ethics, I'll finish my talk. That is metaphysics. I would like to take one parallel, which is done by a famous philosopher, Chris Gudmundsen, in his book, that is Wittgenstein and Buddhism. There, Chris Gudmundsen says that there is a parallel between uh, Wittgenstein and Buddhism, and he says that there is a absolute similarity between Wittgensteinian metaphysics and Buddhist metaphysics, and particularly he is talking about Apohavada, and that Apohavada, as you know, that rejection of the existence of Samanya, and Samanya has been defined in Nyaya as a category, that is Samanya has been defined as Nityam Ekam Anekanugatam. So it is defined as a class concept that, for example, how do you say that a particular word is like uh, when you say that, for example, cats. So various kinds of cats are there, but still you say a particular animal as cat. Why? Because there is a kind of similarity among various cats, as they all belong to a particular class. That is why you say that that is a cat, and that element on the basis of which you decide various individuals, in this case individual cats, as belonging to the class cat, is called Samanya, that is concept of generality in Nyaya philosophy. So Buddhists do not accept this Nyayika's position. They say that there is no Samanya at all. But then how can you solve the problem of calling a particular object as an object? For example, table. You say a particular object is table because there is a tableness in that. So the tableness that is Samanya according to Nyaya doesn't exist according to Buddhist. And this denial of Samanya by Buddhists is called Apohavada theory. So the question is, if there is no Samanya, how a particular word is called, how a particular word is known. For example, you say that cow. So how cow is known as a cow? Because according to Nyaya, cow is known as cow because there is a gotwa. इन काउ देर इज अ गोत्वा, गाय में गोत्वा है इसलिए गाय जो है गाय कही जाती है. इन टेबल देर इज अ टेबलनेस, दैट इज वाई टेबल इज कॉल्ड एज अ टेबल. इन हॉर्स देर इज अ हॉर्सनेस, that is why horse is called as horse. But Buddhists do not believe in it. Buddhists say that there is nothing like nityam ekam anekanugatam, because according to Buddhists everything is momentary, so they are forced to not accept the metaphysics of Nayayikas. So here they say that uh, what is this Samanya then according to Buddhists? According to Buddhists, Samanya is just a practice. That, I mean, we call cow as not non-cow. So cow is to be defined as not non-cow. So all those which are different, cow is called cow because it has to be delineated from all those individual or objects which are different from cow. And cow is not defined as cow because of gotwa or cowness, but cow is basically defined cow because of its differentiation, if it is differences rather, from other objects in the world. This is something which, according to Chris Gudmundsen, is something which is Wittgenstein's view about crisscross resemblance, that is family resemblance, and that is to be found among various forms of life in later Wittgenstein's philosophical investigations. But now there is no time to define as to what is form of life, but for the time being you understand that form of life is culture, and we have to see that there is a cultural resemblances among various cultures. This is called form of life. Now let us go to, from this little differences, little similarities between Buddhism and Wittgenstein, we find that according to Chris Gudmundsen, they are exactly the same. Wittgensteinian notion of family resemblance and Buddhist notion of Apohavada are same metaphysical theories uttered in different uh, parts of the world. But I have shown in one of my paper that basically they are not similar, but there are differences also that should not be discounted, and the differences also must be shown. And this is one of the point where one can write research papers and proceed further in PhD thesis and all. This would be wonderful idea to go ahead in this area. Suppose that no time for explaining all this here, but the point which Chris Kudmun Sen has shown in his book is something which provides a point for further researches. Now let us come to last point of my lecture, and that is the concept of value in moral philosophy or ethics. So Wittgenstein lecture on ethics is quite popular and available everywhere. In that, Wittgenstein defined value as absolute value, which is ethical value. And as different from ethical value, there is one relative value that can be said as instrumental value. And instrumental value is the factual value. For example, usefulness of a particular thing is called instrumental value or relative value, but the absolute value cannot be expressed into words. For example, if you want to explain that, then you are not having particular word to express that. How? Because words they have limited. Language basically is limited to the word of facts. Word is made of facts according to Wittgenstein, and we are not basically going to explain anything which is beyond facts. So beyond the word of facts, there are certain things. For example, feeling of friendship, then feeling of love, then then the uh, experience of death, because according to Wittgenstein nobody is alive to experience death. So basically death do not belong to this world. Then basically the meaning of life. What is the meaning of life? If you try to delineate, then you'll find that there is a something which is beyond this world. So life according to Wittgenstein is like iceberg floating on the ocean, where the invisible portion of iceberg is something more important, that is value of life. And that part of iceberg which is visible basically is something which belongs to world of facts. Now this brief note on Wittgenstein's notion of ethics or notion of value has to be seen in the context of Indian moral philosophy, where we have respect for elders, where we have our religion, our dharma, as a form of life, as a way of life. We don't have religion, we have dharma, where there are many things in life which are inexpressible, which we cannot basically explain in terms of material things, and the importance of immaterial things are given much in Indian form of life than the material importance. So those persons in our society are giving much respect who basically do not much care about the material elements. That doesn't mean that we do not emphasize on earth and karma, but there has to be a balance. That balance is something which is unique to Indian philosophy of and Indian way of life. So in Bhagavad Gita also it is said that we need to see that earth basically are to be accrued according to dharma, and kama is not to be kamachara. Kama basically has to be restricted, and we need to be careful about our desires. That is, what to desire and what not to desire is pretty significant. So these are the things which bring Wittgenstein, and Wittgenstein's style of living itself is a sannyasi's way of life. Like Indian rishi basically live not for themselves, but for uh, the society, but for Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. So this is what Wittgensteinian life we can read and learn, that Wittgenstein was a Western thinker, but basically he lived like a rishi life of India. Thank you so much for inviting me to deliver this.
Thank you, sir. Very, very, very thank you for your words of wisdom. I must say, you are having a command over Indian philosophy also, as well on Western philosophy also, sir. That's why you did a comparison very, very beautifully then between philosophy and darshana, between Indian language and Wittgenstein, and the theory of between Indian theories and the Wittgenstein, between metaphysics, epistemology, and ethics and Wittgenstein. Very, very congratulations, sir. You have discussed all the things very well, and you have guided us very well. Thank you, sir. But I will say one thing. When you have started your lecture, you said that I want to take some questions. So, first question is from my side, sir, because I do believe in Indian philosophy. I don't believe in Western philosophy. When we are talking about Indian philosophy, the Indian philosophers, they know about what exactly they explore, what exactly is body, mind, and intellect is, and it remains in soul, and we are all conscious beings. Okay, and we are got the answer that we ultimately we need salvation, we need liberation from dukkha and sukha, and we need bliss. But when we think about Western philosophers, they explore what exactly the body is, mind is, intellect is, but they think that when they talk about soul, they think that we all are spirits. Okay, they give the a very nice argument. Okay, and they construct and deconstruct the Western theories. So, what do you think? Indian philosophy is eternal or Western philosophy is eternal?
Uh, that is one very tricky question. That is, which philosophy is eternal? Rather, I would like to say that philosophy basically takes uh, different shapes in different time and space. Like there was a time when we appreciated Bradley. There was a time when we had Vedas, and then from Vedas we proceeded to Upanishads, and then from Upanishads we came to various schools, Sutra period, and then from Sutra period we have now come to interpretation period. Likewise, in Western philosophy also, from Socrates onwards, we went to Aristotle, and then from Aristotle we came to this Greek post-Greek period, that is Middle Ages, that is called Dark Ages also, and then we come to modern philosophy. Then we come to contemporary philosophy. So eternity, yes, is one element that no thought basically gets destroyed. It is always there, but we have different kind of orientations in Eastern and Western, which some scholars deny. Like Professor Dayakrishna says that to say that spirituality is landmark in Indian philosophy and materialism is landmark in Western philosophy are not acceptable, because there is a spirituality in the West and there is a materialistic thinking in the East. So to say that a particular form of life is better is not to be acceptable. It is not logical. But our Indian philosophy is good for us. We can say this. We should not just copy the West. This has to be there. What is good for us is that our way of living, our way of sanskaras, our way of doing things, but we should not blindly copy the Western ideas. That is very much acceptable and very much good for our living, for both Shreya and Priya. This is what I can say in brief.
Thank you, sir. Thank very nice answer. Monica, can we take 2 or 3 questions?
Yes, ma'am. We have questions in chat box.
Okay. Okay, you are asking?
Yes, yes. Sir, there is first question. When it is said that language confuses us in knowing the nature of reality, what is the other way of knowing the reality and describing it?
Yeah, I can see that that question has been asked by Dr. Ramana Sharma. And Ramana Sharma, if I don't if not mistaken, basically she belongs to Guwahati, and she had invited me to deliver a lecture in her college. Yes,
Yes,
basically,
sir.
yeah, Ramana Sharma, thank you for this question. This question is very good. basically Wittgenstein says that language, basically we get hoodwinked by language. Language basically is something we get bewitchment bewitchment of our intelligence by means of language. This is the phrase given by Wittgenstein. So Wittgenstein is not saying that there is other way of knowing reality. What he is saying that language is the only way of knowing the reality, through which we can know the reality as well as we can correct ourselves. I mean, language is the one which basically hoodwinks us, which confuses us. Language is the one which confuses us, but language is the one through which we get to learn correct things. So, language basically is the medium. It is the not any other way of knowing the reality, but Indian way of knowing is something more than beyond than Wittgenstein. Here we find that there is a transcendental way of knowing. Take any school of Indian philosophy, for example, you take a heterodox school of Jainism. We find that there is a way of knowing of Avadhi, Keval Gyan and Mana Paryaya, which is not possible in Wittgenstein. Here in Indian philosophy, we find something which we can learn even without language. So that is the kind of knowledge which is inculcated in Vivekananda by Swami Ramkrish Paramahansa. Yes.
Okay, thank you, sir. Second question is, please give some hints on drawing parallels between Advaita Vedanta and Wittgenstein.
Oh, this is big question. Books are written. I can tell you that there is a book by Pani Selvam, and Pani Selvam basically has shown in that book. That book is published from Madras University long back, and Professor Pani Selvam is my friend. You can get this book from Madras University if it's not out of print. I think that is out of print. So you can have this book where you can have parallels like that duck rabbit like there is a picture in PI where if you see from one perspective, you see that is a duck, and from other perspective you'll find that is rabbit. Likewise, if you in Advaita Vedanta, the reality is basically to be seen from various perspectives. That is this phenomenal word and transcendental word. So Vyavaharik Sat and Paramarth Sat. So if you see reality from the Vyavaharik Sat, it is different, but from Paramarth Sat, you find that reality is not to be treated as ultimate reality. So only the Brahma is something which is ultimate really ultimately. Otherwise, the phenomenal world is not real. That has been compared in Wittgenstein as duck rabbit parable, where reality, same picture is presented differently when it is looked from different perspectives. Yes, this is very significant question and it can be research on. So very good. Om Narayan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir. Third and last question. Would you please elaborate how family resemblance is similar to the Buddhist Apovad?
Wow. Yeah, this question is basically significant in the way uh, elucidated by Chris Kudmunsen in his book Wittgenstein and Buddhism. And family resemblance, as you know, is a concept according to which there is a crisscross resemblance, and crisscross resemblance is not similarity or identity. As you can see that there is a difference between identity, similarity, and resemblance. These are the three words. Let us be careful about using these three. Identity, X is identical to itself. This is identity. Then similarity, the X is similar to Y. You can say that. So there is no identity between X and Y objects, but they are basically similar. So say that twins basically. Take the example of twins. Twins could be regarded as similar. So sometimes you get confused as to who is who. So I had two girls in my class, and they were wearing same dresses daily, and the twin sisters, they were all having every dress is like color or everything same. So I used to get confused as to who is what. So the similarity is something different from identity. Identity is means that there is no difference at all between two objects, but similarity, in similarity there could be difference little bit. So like twin sisters, they are similar, they're not identical to each other. Now come to resemblance. Resemblance means that like if same parents, husband or wife, they are having many children, and their sisters and brothers, they are having similar faces in the way that somebody's nose is resembling to the other nose. Not that the everybody's nose, every child's nose is similar, but somebody's cheek is similar to number one cheek is similar to number three, and number four's nose is similar to number five. Like suppose there are five kids in the family, so this is called resemblance. This is not similarity. This is called crisscross resemblance. Means that there is a आड़ी तिरछी समानता इसे कहते हैं हिंदी में. समानता है, सिमिलरिटी नहीं है, बल्कि आड़ी तिरछी समानता है. क्रिस क्रॉस सिमिलरिटी यू कैन से, क्रिस क्रॉस रिजेम्बलेंस है. So like I'm not talking about Chinese family where like everybody's nose is similar to other child's nose, but that is called similarity. But in basically Indian family, suppose like in Indian family, if there are five kids, they have resemblances in their faces. This is called parable from Wittgenstein's philosophical investigations, where he's basically defining as to how words of a particular family could be treated as resembling to each other. For example, take the word prayer. Prayer is taken into treated into various contexts, like prayer in the temple, prayer in job, prayer in different places, and same thing like love. The word love is treated in different contexts. For example, love with the beloved, love with the child, love with the daughter, love with the son, love with the father, love with the mother, love with the wife. So there is a difference in various denotations of the term love, but there is a family resemblance in various interpretations of that particular word love. So there is a resemblance, like there is a crisscross resemblance in the in the faces of various kids of a particular family. Likewise, there is a crisscross resemblance in various applications of the word, for example love. So this has to be understood in this way in Wittgensteinian philosophy of language. Now this is something which rejects essentialism of Tractatus. Essentialism of Tractatus basically talks about that there is essential meaning, like universals has to be accepted. So universals like nityam, ekam, anekanugatam is something which is essences of a particular expression is there, but that identity, that essences or similarity has been rejected by Wittgenstein, later Wittgenstein, and in that place Wittgenstein talks about non-essentialism, and that is later Wittgenstein, where later Wittgenstein is talking about crisscross resemblance, which Buddhist rejection of universals is the Buddhist, which is similar to Buddhist rejection of universals, that is theory of Apohavada. And Apohavada, it is a theory which is well known to all of us, that Buddhists say that cow basically is different. Cow is known as something not because of cowness or gotwa, but because not non-cow. Cow is to be understood as not non-cow. So here basically is also non-essentialist position in philosophy in Buddhism. Likewise Buddhists, likewise Wittgensteinian, later Wittgensteinian rather, not early Wittgensteinian, later Wittgensteinian position is non-essentialist, that is the crisscross resemblance. So in that way, Chris Gudmundsen's thesis is that they are exactly similar. But I have rejected Chris Gudmundsen that they cannot be said to be similar. That is Wittgensteinian, later Wittgenstein position, and Buddhist position, as both are non-essentialists, but there are differences as well, which is a well thought or good paper, which is about to get published. So that I'll send my paper to Dr. Ramdas Sharma later on. Yes.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. So, Pooja ma'am, do you have any other questions?
No, we don't have any question. Once again, thank you. Thank you to both speakers. They have guided us very well. So we have to wind up this program on virtual platform. I can say only that thing that Om Sangachadvam Sambadvadvam Deva Sambho Manansi Jantam Kabira Khadas, because it has started from Vedanta, and I want to end up with Vedanta's theory. बीरा खड़ा बाजार में मांगे सबकी खैर ना कहूँ से दोस्ती ना कहूँ से बैर. Now for formal thanks, I would like to invite my colleague Monica Shivhare that she will deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you. It is my privilege to have been asked to propose a vote of thanks on this occasion. I must mention our deep sense of appreciation for Professor Jatashankar Tiwari ji. We are really enlightened with your knowledge about Vedanta. आपने वर्तमान समय में जो ये पेंडेमिक सिचुएशन चल रही है उसमें वेदांत का जो व्यवहारिक उपयोग बताया है वो हमारे लिए सच में बहुत महत्वपूर्ण है. And I also express my gratitude to Professor K.C. Pandey ji for sharing his deep knowledge regarding Indian and Western philosophy with us. उन्होंने दो विचारधाराओं का जो सामंजस्य हमें दिखाया वो बहुत सुंदर था. But I also extend my thanks to HOD Dr. Hansi West. This event would not have been made possible without support and guidance of her. Though our principal ma'am is not there, Dr. Sadhna Sharma, she has not joined, but we are grateful to her for support and motivation. But next, thanks to Chetna Gupta, convener of the program, to propose this idea and manage this program within a short time period. अगर अंडरस्टैंडिंग को लीक मिल जाए तो काम आसान हो जाता है. And thanks to Ms. Pooja Sharma for anchoring. Thanks to all participants for giving their valuable time, and to all other faculty members for making significant contribution towards organization of this event. Thanks to Anushka, our second year student, for making a wonderful poster, and thanks to all the students. Thank you to all once again. आप सभी का बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद.